All right. I'm excited to have on the podcast with me today, Eric DeLeon. It's good to have you with me, Eric.
Sam, great to be here.
So you're in Oregon, and I can see your Oregon Ducks shirt.
Go Ducks. Yep.
And you are the host of a podcast called the CAD Managers Confessions. So we'll
Yep.
get to that in a second. But if you could just introduce yourself and kind of tell us how you got into the world of CAD and engineering.
Yeah. I've been a CAD manager, I guess, in CAD technologies for about 22 years. And so it's kind of funny because when I was preparing for this, I was thinking, uh, my journey, what's my origin story? And so I think I have a pretty good one. I
Let's hear
was
it.
10 years old and I was raised with my grandparents. And so my younger aunts and uncles were kind of like my brothers and sisters, even though they're my uncles and aunts. But the youngest, which was in the house when I was there, my uncle Martin, him and I have we're like brothers, and we have a really close relationship to this day. And I remember being 10 years old. I was fifth grade. He was doing high school drafting, so back then it was like 85, and so he was doing his capstone project, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, was a full set of house plans. And I just remember him coming home and drawing on bringing the plans home and, having his pencils out, stencils, rulers. And it just really just got to me like, we could be, we can use this art to create, and, people can use these documents to build stuff. I didn't quite understand all of it, but I kind of got that gist of it. And so, that kind of got me in this drafting kind of just, 10 years old. Of course, we all have, other aspirations. I wanted to be a lawyer at one time, but, it was just kind of funny how that kind of just sparked that idea, and, went to school for, drafting CAD technology. And, through my career, I've been fortunate to, been able to work for some amazing companies, and, being able to further the career and, CAD technologies to the point where, like, like for your stuff, beyond CAD, I've taken it, beyond just normal drafting and CAD, and, got into some other kind of technologies as well.
And when you started, I mean, you were probably you're after the days of hand drafting, but did you know people that would tell stories about the glory days of drafting by hand?
Yeah. So when I went to the local community college to start my degree program, it's Chemeketa Community College. It's one of the best drafting CAD programs in the Northwest. So a lot of people from around Oregon come here to Salem for that program specifically. And yeah, so the year I started, it was the first year it went completely digital. And so we still had some students that were carry over from the year before, just finishing up some classes, that were moving on. But they're like, "Oh man, you guys get to use the computer." Yeah, we had to use, like, in order to do a circle, they were using like pop cans and cups and different things to kind of get to get, their symbology and things like that on paper. And so no, I never had it, but, it's definitely lost art. Obviously, I try to bring that kind of mentality into even the way we do things now on the computer, because, back then, there wasn't a lot of redos, right? Like now you can undo, or you can erase or delete something. So they didn't have that luxury because they were trying to get it done as efficient as possible. The way they do plans back then, I mean, they were building bridges. Like, they were building bridges when I worked at the DOT. I saw some old plans, and they were just like 5 sheets. They would build a whole bridge like in 5 sheets. I mean, a lot of it was up to construction contractors' discretion and their best practices. But yeah, it's definitely, I try to bring that along because, again, we're trying to minimize. End of the day, we're trying to be efficient, right? Minimize rework, high quality deliverables. And so if we kind of keep that mentality, not like, oh, I can redo it, or, let's go through all these iterations, which it's a part of the process, but, just trying to keep some of that artistic skill alive in the 21st century.
Yeah, I saw some of that when I was at the DOT here in Nevada, and they would tell some of the old technologies. Like I think they would draft them in really big sheets, so that
Yeah.
they could get them out on a big table. And then they had this special camera that where they would take pictures of those sheets, and then they could compress them down into the 11 by 17s or whatever it was. And so it's like we definitely take our tools for granted. The
Yeah.
stuff that they would take them weeks to do, we could do in probably minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. I love those old pictures. You'll see them on LinkedIn or on social media, the old drafting, back in the day ones. And there's just roll papers, those master plans. I couldn't even imagine those master planners that those people were drafting up those big roll plots back in the day. I mean, there's like 20 people lined up on their stomachs, right?
And they're
So
usually smoking a cigarette and wearing a suit and tie. It's like
yeah, it's nuts. It's
it's a
awesome.
different time for sure.
Yeah, but it's just crazy, and it's kind of cool I'm excited to see where we're going. Things are evolving, and just again, just we can't we have to just keep our eyes open, ears open, because there's a lot of cool things coming out that it's going to make us truly, I know we say it, but work smarter and not harder.
And today we use predominantly AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and Microstation by Bentley. But what tools were you using when you first started in school and afterward?
Yeah, so back then for me, again, I was mainly just AutoCAD. I started with release 12. I know there's some other guys who probably listen to your or my podcast, and they're I was with AutoCAD 1. It's like, that's crazy. I've seen the pictures. Some of the dudes have their old floppy disks, and so it's kind of cool to see that. But yeah, for me it was mainly just AutoCAD to start. We did, luckily the program I went through, we did have some Microstation, because they're aware of the local market, and that the DOT sits in our backyard. And so having ODOT here, they just wanted to make sure that, if you were to possibly get a job with ODOT or something like that, that at least you had some of those skills with Microstation. But, Microstation is very, it's very driven by DOTs and stuff like that, and offshoring, right? They have a lot of stuff for some of their plant design and drafting stuff. But, for the most part, like you said, it's a lot of AutoCAD and Civil 3Ds, but along the way I've honed in on being dual platform with Microstation as well.
Do you have a preference in which one you'd rather work in?
It's, how you want to say it, yes and no. And so I think obviously they're both tools that get the job done, depending on who the client is or the end result. And so I have two thoughts with that. One, for all the visualization stuff that I do, that I've done, try to do still. I love the Autodesk products. They've come up with a great pipeline that you can take now, being able to take data from one software to another and kind of keep it all connected, even though sometimes it works and you have to kind of do a couple different hoops to get what you need as you progress from like AutoCAD, Civil 3D to InfraWorks to 3D Studio Max, and whatever else are you trying to use in there, Revit. There's different formats and different ways that they all read each other. And so, but when it comes, and I know all of my Autodesk, users out there, but when it comes to just drafting, I just really like Microstation. For the ones who've never really used it and used it for a long time, there's just some drafting intuitiveness to it that just allows you to just draft more effectively. And so it's hard to explain, but that's kind of, but anyway.
Yeah, I started out in Microstation when I was at the DOT, and then when I went into the private sector, I used CAD for a little bit. And I'm my experience is very limited in either of them, but there was a time when I was overlapping and using them both day to day, and I remember kind of thinking the same thing. The Autodesk stuff always seemed a little bit more modern and forward thinking, and they always had the latest features and always coming out with new software and stuff like that. But there were things about Microstation that you really missed when you were using AutoCAD. I mean, some things just felt faster and more fluid in Microstation. And maybe it was because they weren't always trying to add new things. You know, they built something and it was slowly evolving over time, but it worked, you know, and they didn't want to break that. So I think there is something in either one of them for whoever's using them. And both companies should be proud of what they built. I mean, you know, everything, you look at a city skyline and what wouldn't, you know, that skyline wouldn't exist without those companies probably. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
amazing. So have you spent most of your career in transportation, or have you done architecture? What industries have you spent time in?
Yeah, so well, early on in my career, I worked for a semiconductor company out of Portland, Oregon. We did a lot of, I was a industrial designer, creating mini environments for clean rooms. So a lot of our Intel is one of our big clients, and such, and other semiconductor. Basically, it's these mini environments where the robots take the wafers for the chips, they stick them in, they dump them in these different solutions, and at the end, it produces all the chips that are used, the processor chips. So it's kind of cool to be able to work. You know, that's where my love for 3D came in, because we used Inventor back then. Actually, it was mechanical desktop. It's kind of like mechanical desktop is like the LDD to Civil 3D. And so, you know, very got the job done for what we wanted. And then we were actually, it was pretty cool. We were an alpha group for Inventor because Autodesk was in our backyard in Lake Oswego. And at that time, I worked in Tigard, Oregon. So, and we were a big user of it. So we got to go through a special program with Autodesk. And so it's kind of cool. We got to be some alpha users and beta users. And some of the features that, or some of the suggestions that we made during that, it was like a 1 week boot camp for this new Inventor. And so a lot of the stuff that we suggested was pretty cool to be seen. That was added into the official release of Inventor back then. And so from there, I went to the DOT. I was looking for a change. I was commuting, looking for a change, and stumbled upon a job opening for an engineering tech at the Oregon Department of Transportation. I was there for 2 years, and that's kind of where I honed in on the kind of the AEC market. And then from there, did 10 years at H.W. Lochner. And then I did another a year at WH Pacific, and then another 5 years at OBEC Consulting Engineers, and now I'm at OTAC. And so really the AEC, yeah, I love that industry. So many opportunities to be able to do, you know, I've done drafting and CAD support and visualization for, you know, bridges, roads, survey, environmental. You know, it's just kind of cool, just all construction management, and it's just kind of cool all the different, you know, spin-offs, you know, the different disciplines that you can support. And that's one of the things I really like about CAD, in that it gives us the ability to, you know, if you do it right or find yourself in a good company, you'll never be bored, because, you know, end of the day, we need to make plans to have something built.
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
very
you know,
transferable skills across
yeah,
a
yeah,
variety of industries.
yeah, it does. And I think people don't take a look at that. Like, you know, one of the things that attracted to, you know, I'm a big fan of yours and your podcast. I caught on way early in its days, probably episode 1 or 2, but the whole concept of beyond CAD, you know, you think about that, you know, you have a skill here that you can use beyond just drafting if you choose to, right? A lot of, hey, you know, if you're happy, you know, drafting bridge, roadway, building, house plans, survey, you know, doing survey documents, great. But, you know, same time though, the industry is moving. And so we have to be able to transfer those skills. And luckily for us, that there's opportunity for us to transfer those skills.
And how did you get into visualization? Because I know not everyone that uses CAD goes down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So, kind of like in our little pre-interview we did the other day, I was, again, my love for 3D came from my first job being an industrial designer. And I thought everybody did 3D. When I went to the DOT, took me back like 20 years. Sorry to say that, but it did. they were still doing 2D drafting. We're doing complex roads and bridges besides 3D surfaces for the roads, right? But we're doing all these bridge plans and we're all just doing 2D line work. And it was just like, wow. And so, I try to push there like, hey, man, I just came from this other industry. We did everything in 3D. You got to do it. And
To
so,
this day, they still do bridge
yeah,
plans in 2D. Like we always get data from our clients and the roadway stuff. They'll send us all the 3D feature lines and triangles, and then the bridge stuff. We got to model that from 2D plans. And it's like
yeah.
this is 2020. I'm sure there are people out there doing bridges in 3D, but predominantly it's been my experience that hasn't changed over the past 10 or 20 years.
No, I agree. And that's kind of one of those opportunities. And I think they're trying, right? Like InfraWorks allows you to do some bridge design. It's not all the way intuitive. I know Bentley has like um, Leap Bridge and some other ones that they're trying to pull out. Civil 3D had a bridge module at one point. I think they're trying. To be honest, I just think I don't know. It just maybe they don't have the right people there to help drive that because it's very doing a lot of for myself for you know a lot of my background is drafting and doing bridge plans and bridge design type stuff, to help supporting the bridge group. So that's kind of like my role, so I look at bridges in different ways when you drive through. I'm like, oh, that's how we would draft that, or that's how they would do that. um, I just think there's some nuances to it because of the detail work that goes into it. I just wish somebody would just what you want, invest in it a little bit more, because it's awesome. We have all this great 3D roadway work, surfaces, you have terrain, you have everything up to the approaches of a bridge, and then there's this big hole, right? And there's no there's no connection. we're
Yeah, I mean,
literally we're literally not bridging the gap in
yeah,
our own
exactly.
design.
And not just to pick on the structures guys, but I mean there are other things that are 2D. Striping is still in 2D. Sign packages, those things are all 2D. So there's still a place for a company like us to go in and put all these pieces together in 3D. Uh, but yeah, it is shocking sometimes when you start looking at those things. So when you were doing visualization, either in the private or the public sector, would you actually get assigned that task and have time set aside to visualize, or was it always just kind of a hobby where you would have access to the data and then you would take it in something like 3ds Max or
Yeah,
InfraWorks
both.
and render
I
it?
think it was both. I mean, again, transferring those skills when I went to actually HW Lochner, great company. I had a great boss there who saw that passion that I had of we have the ability to use 3D to communicate our designs better internally, right? So that way we can sharpen pencils have them sharpened a little bit more, for quantities, being able to know the relationship between like structures and the road and things like that. And so I don't know. I just had this thing, and so I was given the opportunity to like, okay, like I was talking when I went to Lochner, I was the first person in the company to have a computer or to even do visualization. I think at that point they may have farmed it out, and so, but yeah, but it was one of those where when you're trying to build up a group internally, right? You're trying to making sure that you protect the bottom line. And so, yeah, there has to be investments, but if you're investing in doing some of this marketing overhead type of activities, it's not billable work. So it takes away from utilization. And so it was one of those things where, I was throwing a bone, it's always like, okay, oh, here's an opportunity, we'll do it. And then I don't use Max or something else for 6 months. And then I get it again. So I have to relearn, I have to relearn everything I did because it'd be so far between. Um, but yeah, and then at some point, we had the opportunity where like, okay, every pursuit, we're going to try to do this. At least a 3D composite rendering. I thought those were probably the best and easy. I had a graphics designer in Salt Lake City. Him and I would pair up and just give us a photo, give us the plans, and we would make an awesome composite rendering. And so that was kind of our bread and butter. And so, but yeah, I mean, it was one of those, sometimes you got the opportunity, sometimes you didn't. But when you did, you had to try to take advantage of the opportunity to maximize what you're doing.
Do you still do any visualization today?
No, not I mean, I do some stuff just for myself, but again, different companies. I've worked for a couple different companies. This one right now, where I'm at, I'm helping to bring back a traditional CAD group. And so they're focusing on standards, project delivery. It's in the forecast. I told my boss that, hey, we have to, but where I'm at too, though, we have a architectural group. And so it seems like a lot of stuff's being thrown through, is going through them for some of these. So, for myself, yeah, I have the skill set, but due to the nature of the culture of the company, I'm not doing that day to day per se.
As far as CAD and drafting goes, do you prefer to be hands-on doing it yourself, or do you like the management and team building aspect of it more?
All of it. I like to consider myself a manager doer. I don't think, and this is my perspective, um, in my opinion, and so I don't think you can adequately, I don't want, I even cringe as I say it, adequately manage people and tasks and mentor your team if you're not doing the work too, right? So I'll roll up my sleeves. I'll do draft. I mean, I still do red lines. I still set up sheets and so forth. And so, sometimes it comes from my own people. Some of my team need help, so they'll give me directions of what needs to happen. And it's like, hey, this is where I left off. This is what we need to do. All right, well, I'll just jump in and do it. For me, I just have to be. I think there's some hands-on components I think is required. I want to stay connected to my group. I don't want to be disconnected and not understand their needs, their frustrations, especially as some of the new technology comes out, the new workflows. I think it's a team effort. I try to tell my team, uh, I think what makes a great team is that we all come from we have different experiences, which is the reason why we hire certain people, right? They're filling the gap. And so with that is, I'll be straight up. I don't know everything. It's impossible to know everything. Even though I'm your manager, I try to stay ahead of you guys. But for the most part, though, I mean, there's some things that, I learn every day from them. And I just really try to make it a really good team dynamic there where, it's not a hierarchy. We're side by side and, we're all here to do something. And, I'll try to make sure that you have opportunities to grow your career, use a software like you like. But if you don't want to do anything besides, just plan production, drafting type tasks, then that's fine. We need those people.
Well, I know that you're a student of leadership, and I can tell you, you do your best to put those principles into action. And with my team, whenever I roll up my sleeves and try to do something, I usually break it, and they, find a way to tell me that I should go find something else to do. So it's I think you're lucky to have training in the thing that you manage. Not everybody has that. Like I was saying, in my experience, I was trained in civil engineering, and now I'm trying to manage basically an artist, a team of artists. And so there are challenges there. And so I think by you being, an expert and a professional in the craft, you're not only able to manage, but you're able to do and show by example. And so there is a lot of synergy, I think, for your team in that way.
I hope that's my goal.
So you mentioned beyond CAD, as far as just moving beyond CAD in general, personally and through the industry. So what's the next thing beyond what we're doing currently with computer aided drafting?
Well, I mean, for me, I think it's just taking the data. We kind of talked about this before, was the repurposing of data, right? And sometimes we have to look outside of our industries for inspiration of what is the next thing, right? And so, and I think some of the things that you're doing, is cutting some of its bleeding edge because not a lot of people are seeing that, right? So, I've been a big proponent of being, when I was hustling and marketing the LiDAR back in the day, the big thing I loved about it is you're taking somebody into an environment, right? So you're doing something very similar with like game engine technology. And so, from there, then it becomes, the AR and the VR, right? The interactive, first, it's kind of interactiveness that you're trying to build, right, with your company, and the amazing deliverables that you're doing for your clients that I'm seeing, seeing you produce and make, which is fantastic. It helps further this cause. But then, it's now it's taking people into it so that way they can experience it in a way that they've never have before. And so, again, I think some of the things that we're doing will stay true for right now because, we have to have plans to build still. But along the way, though, how we communicate that to stakeholders, communities, project teams, um, you know, is going to evolve just so that we can have a better sense of the things that we're designing and how it impacts the community.
And as I've thought about this and talked to others about it, sometimes it's frustrating that we're behind the architectural community,
Yep.
maybe 10 or 20 years, I think both in design and in visualization. And part of that reason to give ourselves credit is because they're solving easier problems than us, like they're building on flat ground typically and straight
Yep.
edges. And we're not, we're on sometimes entire cities and nothing's flat. And so it's exponentially more complicated. So we're behind architecture. And if we look at what they've done, you take something like, Revit. So initially they were doing using something like CAD, and they
Mhm.
were drafting in 2D. Some of them still do,
Yep.
but that's what they were doing 20 or 30 years ago, making plans, and the building was being built. Well, then Revit came around and they were doing that, but also in 3D. And then you could cut any cross section you'd want. You could take quantities, it really was true BIM. I don't think we have true BIM in civil yet.
No.
And then if they wanted to render, they just push a button. Well, it's not exactly push a button, but they,
Yeah, I got.
add textures to the 3D model,
Yeah.
and they render it out, and they can make a render. And so you imagine maybe we could do that in our industry, where there is a Revit, and what we're trying to build with our visualization software. I don't even think it will be that, because we're focusing completely on visualization. But imagine if Civil 3D or something was so advanced that you built everything in 3D, including bridges, including striping, including signs, and they were put where they're supposed to be. And then you could take quantities, and then you could push button renders, and you could do site distances, and you could do LiDAR, and you
Yep.
could do all this stuff in one space. Like right now it's so disparate in all these different things. It's like, what do we need to be doing today to get there? What's the Revit of 2030 for the civil world?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, that's just the focus. That's just the focus of Bentley and Autodesk, right? They're the two major players in our markets that we're for the work that at least that we do, right? We're doing a lot of civil, use from civil engineer, me doing plan productions for the AEC industry and other kind of technologies that go with that. But yeah, it's just and that's what I'm saying. It's like because I know people from both from both companies, right? And so when I go to conferences in the past and then the present, it just seems like they talk a lot about BIM, and I think they have a lot of stuff that is there. But like you said, nobody's really looking at all the different pieces, and then how can we make them into one space? Again, InfoWorks is trying, they have Navisworks, it's Compustation, everybody's trying, but I don't, it's kind of like a team, right? I don't think everybody is, I don't know, maybe this is just me, maybe they're not all in that same room, just having that jam session, right? I don't know, maybe have a focus group of folks like you and I and others in the industry, it's like, how can we make this truly work smarter and more efficient. That way, at the end of the day, it's going to save, projects money, right? Minimizing rework and change orders in the field, right? Because some of the stuff, if it was truly integrated, we can see all that, get the right quantities, get the right, get the right design at the right elevations, get the site distancing figured out and done. So that way, everything's, we're not building and going, oh, shoot, that's not going to work. I mean, they don't do that, but sometimes it does. Something slips through the cracks. And so, I don't
And,
know, man.
and
A lot of
maybe
opportunity.
and maybe Autodesk is sitting back, just kind of laughing to themselves because we have no idea what they have.
Exactly.
Maybe they have a roadmap, but from our perspective, it's like they have, they are looking at all the problems, but they're solving it with a variety of software in both companies. And you and I are kind of saying, is the solution that these softwares are going to converge at some point, or do you just choose one and kind of build the features out? And maybe the technology isn't good enough yet. Maybe it would just make our computers melt to the floor if we tried to do to a civil project what they're doing, with Revit on architectural projects. So it is a matter of time, and maybe there is opportunities for someone else to get in there. But I do think that eventually, one of those major players or others will solve that problem. And when our kids are drafting and designing in the future, it's going to be one platform. Not that architects don't use other software, but you can do pretty much everything in one software right now, and you can't right now in civil.
Yeah, that's the one thing that was crazy because the company that I'm at now, this is the first one I actually, most civil engineering firms that I've been a part of, there's always this a couple disciplines you don't want to ever have. It's like architecture, geotechnical, and sometimes survey. There's a high risk. Those are just just ones you really have to know your stuff, I guess. I don't know, but this is the first one that had a architecture studio, which is awesome. I'm like, all right, I got to learn what Revit really is and how that works, and this, further my management of a team and project delivery. And I get to see this architecture workflow now. Now I'm like all full circle, But when they were telling me, we're trying to set up some standards, do some stuff, they're like, oh yeah, we do. Where's your sheets at? They sit in this file. What do you mean they sit in the file? Yeah, the model and the design, it's all in one file. What are you talking about? It took me, somebody to sit down with me because I'm so used to having, from a civil workflow, you have base files and you have plan sheets. They're separate. And I like to keep stuff separate for that purpose of case something goes corrupt, something goes bad, your eggs aren't in one basket. You can have multiple people help out when it comes crunch time to get something out. And the architects are just telling me, no, we do everything in one file, with multiple users in one. I'm like, what's going on? And so that concept, I think the technology and the concept is there. I think it's just a matter of just expanding that to what that workflow would look like from a civil perspective, I guess.
Yeah, we'll get there, hopefully, for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about your podcast. Give us a pitch on kind of what it's about and why people should tune in.
Yeah. So again, when we talked about, I've been sitting, been doing CAD Manager for a long time, and I just needed an outlet. I've been sitting on this idea for a while. They talk about, creating a personal brand, creating a platform to share stuff. And so, I can't do beyond CAD concept because you already do that. I could do a different one, but that if somebody already had kind of that niche, of course we all have different perspectives, but I'm like, why don't I just create a podcast for CAD managers? The name of it came about was I was actually doing I was a guest, I did a guest author for articles for the Blast for the CAD Learning, and so the Blast is a monthly digital newsletter magazine that gets sent out to like 24,000 subscribers, according to CAD Learning. And so we use their platform as our online training, on-demand training solution at my last company. And so I was already in their ecosystem. They kind of knew what it was about. They're like, hey, we don't hear a lot from CAD managers. Do you want to do a guest, do some guest articles? I said, sure. And so, so I wrote one, and then we were going back, what should we title it? And I don't know, something just came. I said, how about we call it CAD Manager Confessions? It's kind of like me just sharing my lessons learned and, all the things that I've learned along the way, and just share them. And they love the idea. And so, I did like, a handful of those articles for them. They're like, anytime you want to write something, let us know, we'll publish it. And then I said, well, I've kind of built this little brand on this. And so, we're getting some good feedback from their end users of, they like this CAD manager perspective. And so, kind of spun that idea. Okay, I kind of want to make a podcast. I'm doing these guest articles for this online magazine. And so why not call it the CAD Managers Confessions podcast? It's a podcast for CAD managers. We have this journey, and kind of like for yourself, unless you're walking in the shoes, it's really hard to understand that journey, right? And so, again, we're and I looked around, not a lot, there's not a lot of stuff for CAD managers. I mean, there's a couple of iconic CAD managers, there's like two. Robert Green's one, he's all over Autodesk and Catalyst.com and those stuff for being the CAD manager guy. There's a couple of other ones in the community. Um, and so, you know, but nobody's really just there to, they publish some stuff. So I just decided to take it from a blog type of platform and stick it on a podcast platform, since that's kind of the way people are listening now.
Well, it's smart too, because not only are you speaking directly to other CAD managers, but also those that use CAD, I'm sure, can find that content helpful as well in their own careers.
Yeah. So I've actually had two people reach out to me through that. They said, "Hey, I see that you're doing this podcast." And so one dude, Raphael out of Phoenix, is like, "Hey, can you give me like 10 minutes?" And I responded right away, like within like an hour we were talking, and so he just has, he's an up and comer. He has some questions about changing careers and what to do there, like what am I looking for? Because I'm a hiring manager as well, right? I see lots of resumes and you have to do lots of interviews. So I gave him some pointers there. And then I had somebody from like Florida reach out, she wanted some accountability of how can I pivot my career? I'm doing this now. And so it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool to kind of give back to the up and comers, because, at some point, some of them want to be managers as well, or want to be better team players, or, they want to progress in their careers as well. So it was pretty cool to, have a couple of opportunities there just to, talk to some up and comers and kind of give them some guidance, and, hopefully it serves them well.
Well, that's one thing I appreciate about your podcast is it's not just like, file directories and line types. It's like you're giving people career advice and life advice from what you've learned. And I think that's fitting to the title. So if anyone wants to learn more about CAD Managers Confessions, where could they go?
Yeah. So, you can just go to Apple Podcast. Just do a search for CAD Managers Confessions. LinkedIn, Eric DeLeon, DeLeon, Eric with a C. You can reach out there, and just I'm still early. I'm still early in my journey, and so I'm trying to, find my voice of, how I want to articulate some of these lessons, life lessons, and advice that I'm going through every day. And so, if there's something out there that, you think would be a good topic, again, I have access to a bunch of other CAD managers, which I plan on interviewing very similar to this. So that way we can further the CAD manager movement. Just be able to give some recognition to some amazing people doing some amazing work across different companies, different industries, with a title, with that kind of role and title of a CAD manager, CAD supervisor, drafting manager, production manager, those kind of folks. Just give them opportunity. Maybe, I think by sharing some of these lessons, it kind of helps us to further solidify some of the things that we know, like, hey, get some confidence of like, I am good at what I do. And maybe I can help other people out along the way.
Well, good for you. I know, like you said, you were planning that for a long time. You finally got it out there, and I think the world's better. Definitely your industry is better off for it. Well, do you have any parting thoughts for us, Eric, before we call this one good?
Yeah, thank you again for, giving me the opportunity to be a part of your podcast. And, again, doing some amazing stuff. It's definitely inspiration for me as I try to, progress my career and try to figure out new ways, just like you are, new ways for the way you present engineering data to the world. One of the things is, for anybody listening, just stay true to who you are. We all have special gifts, You know, you're in that desk, in that seat for a reason. They hired you. You know, and you know, just stay true to those things and what you bring to the table. You know, it's a team effort. One is, you know, one of my things is, you know, we're doing all these things, making sure that, you know, there's never a perfect set of plans. You know, that's kind of my tagline is, you know, all of this that we're doing is the pursuit of the perfect set of plans. And so with that, just follow your standards, make sure you QC stuff, and work as a team. Communication is huge. But you know, we're all unique. We all have special gifts. So go out and show the world what you have.
Appreciate that. One of the YouTube channels I watch is Corridor Crew.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you do the visual effects, but I think his name's Ren. He gave a TED talk, and basically his closing line was, "A movie's never finished; it's just shipped." You know, that's kind of
Yeah.
what you were saying. That the plans aren't ever done; they're never perfect. They're just put out there, and hopefully there aren't any change orders. And same with us. You know, our renders, they're never perfect, but we do got to get them out the door and make them as good as we can and learn from them. So the respect is mutual, Eric. I appreciate all that
Thank
you've
you.
done and that you're doing for the industry, and I know many great things will come. So thank you,
Thank you very much, and have a see you later, and talk to you later, and good luck.
and stay safe out there in this world.
Yeah, you too, man.